Coming up, the New York Football Giants make more cap space, restructuring Dexter Lawrence. We get a mock draft that suggests big things for Big Blue in the first round. And also, it's plant your flag time, Andy. We give you our 1 month out preview of where we believe the Giants will go in the NFL draft. Coming up next. Yes, my friends. It is OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where you know that we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Andrew Makowitz. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're wise, and we're brought to you by Pietential, Pietential. That spells Pietential, where you can get over and for individual users have access to a free online assessment that sets a baseline for your well-being, gives you tools to improve, and also tracks your progress over time. It's something that anyone should be using on an individual level. Maybe GM should be using it. Maybe draft picks should be using it. We haven't used that yet when we talk about Pietential. Draft picks, the angst of where you're going to go. Get over to pietential.com today and check out how you can start to improve yourself and how we can improve ourselves, Andy. Is talking about Dexter Lawrence restructuring for the New York Football Giants, giving them $7.5 million in additional cap space, which they desperately needed if they want to make any free agent moves or pay for their draft class. Were you surprised that it was Dexter Lawrence and not Andrew Thomas that the Giants did the restructure with, given that Lawrence's contract already looked pretty sweet from a positional value when we were seeing some of the money go this free agency?
Yeah, it was interesting just knowing most people say that Andrew Thomas can likely create more than what Dexter Lawrence can, a lot more. 14.4 million is the report of what the restructure would look like for Andrew Thomas. But I shouldn't be surprised because this is how Joe Schoen operates. He operates in the idea of let's just get enough to make the next transaction.
Right.
Let's not restructure anything until we absolutely need the money. And so he starts with the simple one with Dexter Lawrence to clear up a little bit of room to be able to bring guys like Isaiah Hodgins back, Matt Nelson in, other fringe moves to fill out the roster. But if they're going to take a big swing or something's going to happen, they're probably going to need the money from Andrew Thomas at some point. But let's start with the money that we need now and worry about that type of thing a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. And it ends up basically coming out to, as Dexter Lawrence is under contract through 2027, his base salary will never exceed 18.5 in 2026, and then it'll be down to 18 million in 2027. But the prorated signing bonus now will increase to $7.1346 million every single year over the life of the contract. That's how you go ahead and spread that money out and give yourself a little bit of cap relief. As we said, they only had just under $2 million in cap space before they made this move. So whether it's getting a couple of veterans in here, we've highlighted cornerbacks, bringing in some live bodies here, maybe an extra wide receiver, although we have news on that front too. I almost forgot. But you needed to do this because we know the draft class is also going to cost you money next month. And to your point, it does get them a little bit north of 10 million now. It's still not going to be enough. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do things other than Andrew Thomas. Maybe it's some other players. We're going to talk a little bit about one Darren Waller here as well. But Isaiah Hodgins, just real quick, Isaiah Hodgins, we thought it was over. We thought the man was done. He was going to find greener pastures somewhere else. He comes back to the New York Football Giants. Do you look at this as, okay, yeah, great, whatever? Or do you cast your mind 2 seasons ago and say, okay, I don't know what happened last year, but I can get optimistic that if we get back to a little bit more of a rhythmic offense, a little bit better protection, obviously, on the offensive line, Isaiah Hodgins can carve out a role for himself in this offense, even if he's getting bumped down the pecking order now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the Giants said, hey, we like you. We don't like you enough to pay you the $3 million on the restricted free agent tender,
Right.
but we like you. We think you could be a complementary piece in this offense. You know the scheme, you know the system. When he came on the scene, Adam, after he left the Bills, he scored in 4 consecutive games. It looked like, including a playoff game, it looked like he was a guy you're like, wow, did the Giants, strike gold with a wide receiver 3 type. I was surprised. I think the Giants said we'd like you back, but we have a number in mind, and they said go find out what you have available on the open market. Clearly, it doesn't sound like the market was as robust as Hodgins would have liked. But also, maybe he just wanted to stay here. Maybe he was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I've spent a couple of years in New York. I like it here. Familiarity with the coaching staff. I'm going to come back. I'll be honest. I'm less surprised about Isaiah Hodgins than I am about Darne Holmes returning.
Uh,
Hearing Darne Holmes coming back to me was very surprising. Maybe it shouldn't have been because of how he performed on special teams and kind of carved out a niche for himself. But were you surprised that Darne Holmes was back, given that he kind of was in and out of the lineup and really didn't show out for most of the season?
Yeah, same thing. I think maybe we talk about these guys, and not Isaiah Hodgins, obviously brought in from a practice squad spot, but Darnay Holmes, relative to where he was drafted for the Giants, you say, hey, this guy never lived up to expectations. We need to move on. But if you reframe it, and kind of like what Cam Brown did for himself too, right? Okay, whether or not I was a late mid round pick, and I could have been a linebacker here, could have been a contributor on defense. Well, I have a special teams role, and that's how I'm going to make my living. Darnay Holmes, we'd say, yeah, he was overdrafted by the Giants. But in terms of value to a team, and it's only a 1-year deal, right? It's, hey, you have special teams value for us. And even though we think that he certainly dropped off in what our expectations were from playing in a secondary standpoint, he does have a lot of reps, right? So if you're Shane Bowen, you at least look at it as, yeah, maybe we carve you out as mostly a special teamer. But there's probably isolated times when you can use him defensively. He is bigger. He does have some size and physicality to him. We know it's going to be matchup dependent, but I think he can still have a little bit of value there. So there's a part of me that kind of likes this, that the Giants and Joe Shane restructured things, right? Brought in some veteran guys, reshaped the offensive line, see some players getting pushed out, and then still looked around the room and said, you may not be the same player we thought you were going to be, but you can have value to this team. And we don't need to start going and bring in veteran X, new veteran, learning a new system, coming into a new building when we have familiarity with a couple players.
Yeah, I agree with that. You think about they want we already have Darius Slayton. Obviously, that feels like he's locked into one of the potential starting roles. You
Yeah,
have Jalen Hyatt there, who you're looking to kind of build upon. What I consider a mixed bag for year one. You have Wandale Robinson, who Joe Shane absolutely loves and went up and made sure to get him earlier than I think you and I both expected
for
Wandale to
sure.
be drafted. And so, like, you have a complement of guys, and now you're thinking like, can I have a fourth or fifth wide receiver that can come in and be sturdy, catch a ball, knows the system, can run a play if someone gets hurt or if we need someone to step up? I feel like Isaiah Hodgins does that. It does not change the need for some big wide receiver number one, whether it's in the draft, free agency, or trade. Giants still have that glaring hole even after the Isaiah Hodgins signing.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll see here, obviously, how things unfold, because even these contracts, guess what? There's the draft, and there's still more free agency, and there's cuts that are going to happen. So we highlight what the Giants are doing, but understand it's going to be pretty fluid here for the next couple of months as we get towards training camp. The other thing here that I will tie to Isaiah Hodgins, at least on a small level, is Darren Waller. So we talk about a restructure maybe for Andrew Thomas and the money it can free up. We know right now Darren Waller. Actually, now I'm going to let you kind of frame this, because I think you've correctly prescribed where Darren Waller is coming from in terms of the conversation that's being had with the Giants. But I think having Isaiah Hodgins at least in the room is good. Why? Because you mentioned those touchdowns 2 years ago. He is a bigger bodied receiver. He's not necessarily the quickest guy in the room. Okay, great. I'm not telling you he's a pseudo tight end, but in terms of the structure of the offense, when we get near the red zone and we want to have some bigger boys, maybe that's where your value at least is in the short term until the Giants get to the draft and look to address it in a more significant way. But tell me about Darren Waller, because I think my opinion is one way or the other, this guy is not going to be here, but you think that he may be playing chess with the New York Football Giants.
Well, okay, so let's set the scene with Darren Waller. Let's talk a little brass tack. Let's talk dollars and cents, Adam. He's got a 14.08 cap hit for the year, so
It's
just
too much.
over $14 million. If the Giants cut him, they're 7.8 in dead cap. It means 6.2, 6.3 rounding number basically is what the Giants can save in cap space if they were to outright cut him. If Darren Waller decides that he wants to retire, which is being mulled over or reported by everyone that he is mulling it over, the number doesn't change for the Giants. It's the same 6.2, $6.3 million that they will get back whether he retires or he's cut.
Right.
And I think if I tried to put myself into Darren Waller's shoes, obviously 14 million after being injured over the last few years is a very big number.
Sounds nice.
And if you're hearing whispers that maybe the Giants might ask you for a restructure or a pay cut, if you're put yourself in, I'll be Darren Waller for a second.
Okay.
So I can either not play football
Mhm.
and I can get about the $7 million is the dead cap for you. I get the money, I could play football and I could get that same amount of money.
Mhm.
Or option 3 might be you ask me to take a pay cut and I get less money than either retiring
Right.
or keeping my contract the same. So like if you're in Darren Waller's shoes, you got to be sitting here being like, I'm not going to take a pay cut. Either cut me or I retire and I'm getting the same amount of money. But what I'm not going to do is restructure it for a team friendly deal and give up all this money for no reason. Either I'm
Yeah.
just not going to play and collect my check, or I'm going to play at the amount that I'm owed. Like, do you think that that's factoring into his mind in this point?
I think so. And listen, yeah, I think so. And I've dealt with this like on the net side of things, excuse me, with like injuries. And a lot of times fans want to go, this guy, because you can't, you got to get like, listen, I begrudge Darren Waller nothing for being a player that has a hard time staying healthy. It's a fact of the NFL and a fact of getting older at that position. But in the end, the Giants need to make smart decisions here. And while Darren Waller may legitimately be thinking, yeah, it's been rough and I can't stay healthy and maybe just be better if I walked away, if I'm going to walk away, then I need to think about how much money I'm walking away with. So, in the end, I think the Giants, and I don't know if you disagree, we can move on from this, but in the end, I think that Darren Waller is gone one way or the other because I think the Giants are going to want to have that cap space, even if they rate now. So they're at 10 million. Even if they do the restructure with Andrew Thomas, okay, that's another 14. You're talking about having 24. You're going to drop 10 of that immediately when it comes to your draft class. You want to carry over for injuries and then any other additional signings you may want to make. I guess technically that's more than like they'll be fine to do that. But I also think that if you're Joe Shane, you're probably looking at the, as you say, I'm going to make the decision at the last possible moment when it comes to making new capital. Well, I know I have I got cap space here. Like Darren Waller represents that. And if I can make other little margin moves and not restructure Andrew Thomas, then I think that might be Joe Shane's preference. The question is, can they get there if it's a post June 1, release for Darren Waller? And can they still navigate the money needs between now and then?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Joe Shane, you have this plan B in your back pocket to be able to free up $6+ million in cap space. I think what Joe Shane is sitting here saying is one, I traded a third round pick for this guy, so he better play if he's motivated to play. He's playing for the Giants. The second piece of it is, can I can I improve the roster more with $6 million of extra cap space,
Yeah. Yeah.
more than Darren Waller brings to the table if healthy, right? Like Darren Waller, we know, is often injured. His hamstrings have been a challenge for quite a while.
Yeah.
But when he is healthy, he is a top 10 tight end in the league, top 12 tight end if you want to say it. And so for $6 million, you kind of weighing it like, will two fringe defensive linemen and a veteran cornerback make more of an impact on this roster than having Darren Waller at the tight end position? He has the money in the back pocket, but I think Joe Shane is still sitting here saying, as of right now, Darren Waller gives our team the best improvement if he plays rather than the cap space.
All right, we'll leave that there for now. Andy and I might disagree on it, but I think the draft also plays a big factor. Who do you bring in, and how do you restructure that offensive side of the football? And we know they obviously brought back Lawrence Cager and also a couple of blocking tight ends this offseason as well. We move on. Why? Because it's double dip time, Andy. We had Pro Football Network came out with a mock draft that you and I have not discussed this type of scenario for the New York Football Giants. So they come out, and there's a quick one in here, a note about the Cincinnati Bengals. They kind of make the first splash of this mock draft, where at the 4th overall pick, they make a trade up with the Arizona Cardinals. They get the 4th overall pick. They take Marvin Harrison Jr. Cardinals get T. Higgins. They get the 18th overall pick, and they get a first-round pick in next year's draft. Now, we could debate, but for the sake of time, we won't, whether or not that's total value for Arizona. It's a multiple first-round picks. You're paying a contract for T. Higgins. You obviously still have Kyler Murray. Like, there's things there that make a lot of sense. And from a Bengals standpoint, you're going, holy crap, that's a wide receiver combo for a returning Joe Burrow from injury to say, watch out. We know we need to stay highly competitive. So that's the first little wrinkle, Andy. But then we get to 6, and the Giants take Malik Nabers, and we go, great, because Joe Alt goes to the Chargers at 5. And we think, great, we get our weapon. That's what we've been waiting for. Fantastic job. Go ahead and travel on down the line. After 9 and Brock Bowers to the Bears, after we see Fuaga go to the Jets at 10, Minnesota takes Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA. And then the Denver Broncos come up, Andy. And how about this one? The New York Football Giants trade for the 12th overall pick, and the Denver Broncos receive Daniel Jones, the 47th overall pick, and a 2025 fourth round pick. Point stop. If you could, would you make this type of move as they then go on to select JJ McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan, if it meant getting out and being done with the onus that is Daniel Jones, all things being equal, knowing that you can move on from it at the end of the year? Is this the type of move, regardless of how you feel about the quarterback, that you think the Giants should make if it's an opportunity?
The Giants would be crazy to not do this deal
Wow,
if it
great
comes.
phrasing by Andy.
You like that, right?
He had
You
me.
like
He had me
you
ready to
like
get juiced up on that one. I
you
thought he was
like
going
the
to go,
pause,
they'd
you like
be
the inflection
insane to
point.
do this. No, he
They
says, yeah.
it would be crazy for them to not do this deal. I
Mhm.
think we both probably agree. If you're telling me that you can get the quarterback people are talking about that you potentially would want at 6, you get the transcendent wide receiver number 1 that we believe Malik Nabers can be. You can get yourself out of Daniel Jones's contract, whether or
Yeah.
not you think he can be a serviceable quarterback or not in this league. You're getting yourself out from under it, putting yourself on a rookie contract, and you're sending a second and a fourth round pick on top of that. To me, like, you would be checking 5 boxes at once, and it would be a huge swing. Now, would it mean that we'd be competitive this year with JJ McCarthy and Malik Nabers? Who knows? But you would at least see the foundation of what you are trying to build, and you can say in 2 or 3 years, like, the Giants have a plan. This is where they're going forward. And if JJ McCarthy is what they believe him to be, then you feel like the Giants are in a good position for success for the next decade, basically.
Yeah, and that's what I think was fascinating about this, because we've talked about, well, do they pick at 6? Do they try to trade up? Should they trade back? Who are they getting? We're thinking about one player. We've even talked about the Vikings. Okay, maybe they could trade back and send a little extra assets back that way for Minnesota. And then in 11 and 23, cornerback, wide receiver, right? Multiple weapons helping to build this team. But this one is, I think, from a Joe Shane and Brian Dable perspective, it's here you go, John Mara. This is the plan. This is the path, and we're ready to do it now, right? Like, and I think from resetting a timeline, while I agree with you, does that mean that's going to happen instantly with JJ McCarthy? Maybe not, right? And that's why you have Drew Lock, and that's why you gave him the $5 million guaranteed. But at least you know that this is what we're doing, and it makes 2024 look more like we're just outside the door. And then next year, the door fully, maybe some point during the season, the door opens up and you start to see the fruits of all the decision making for Joe Shane. So it'd be a home run hit, whether or not the Denver Broncos can get the cap space that they would need to do this, because the other side is a little bonus, $13.8 million in additional cap space for the Giants in making this move and getting out from underneath Daniel Jones. So there's a lot of mechanisms here. How much you can respond back, but how much more would you attach to a move like this if it was required to get the deal done?
I mean, I'm shocked that the Giants wouldn't be sending a first round pick in the future to be able to facilitate this deal. That's kind of where my head originally goes. It's like,
It does seem odd.
we're getting a first round pick. We're getting off of a big bloated
I
contract
did.
off a guy off an ACL, and we're giving you a second and a fourth. Like, it feels like, what's the catch? And I think the catch is twofold, Adam. One is, in this scenario, we're first saying that the Minnesota Vikings, who are in desperate need of getting a quarterback, who have accumulated first round picks to move up in the draft, are going to stand pat and not take a quarterback that is available to them where they sit at 11. That's the first domino that you're like, that would be puzzling to me if the Minnesota Vikings made that choice. The
Yeah.
second is, why, if you're the Denver Broncos, you would have to be in love with Daniel Jones. Like, Sean Payton would have to say, I could get Bo Nix, I could get Michael Penix, I could do all these different things, but Daniel Jones is the guy that I would prefer over all of them. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But to your point, the Giants would probably have to do some kind of restructuring or accept more of the cat,
Yeah.
because it really doesn't make any sense for the Broncos having this massive cap hit on Russell Wilson, then go take a huge cap hit with Daniel Jones as well.
And by the way, this one came care of Lorenzo Reyna over on Pro Football Network, just for credit's due. And he does mention as well that that's a part of it. Would the Giants need to eat $13.8 million in cap space? Would they have to eat some of that contract, sending it out? Even, by the way, I think you and I would agree, if you ate all of the if you didn't free up any money from this move, you would still make the move if you're the Giants. Say, great, we'll eat the money from Daniel Jones' contract this year, because now, even with the money on the books, whatever, we still see the new structure in place. Worth noting, whether or not we think this is likely, or if Minnesota Vikings fans would love this, with the 23rd pick, they have Bo Nix going to the Vikings. So it's okay. We are addressing our quarterback spot. We're actually just being more patient with it. And it does, at least, that's a different kind of wrinkle. On the one hand, you say when they make that move for the extra first round pick, it's because they want to move all the way up the board to get somebody. However, maybe it's just not that feasible to achieve that, and they're positioning themselves for what's considered to be maybe a second tier, but certainly a very talented quarterback. And another wrinkle around this, Andy. So, you're shocked to hear. Andy and I love the idea of not giving up a lot and getting a franchise quarterback if the Giants believe in him. The other part of this, though, is reports have been coming out that the New York Football Giants were really dialed in on Jaden Daniels, right? They like him. They think he's the guy. They want it. They want to be able to get him, but they don't want to have to move up anywhere to go get him. They're thinking, hey, can he fall there? Or maybe it's a little tiny move. But clearly right now, all reports are it's top three quarterbacks. That's what it is. And the Giants are unwilling to move heaven and earth to go get one of those guys. Does that play into you at all here about, and then they pivoted essentially, the reports are they pivoted to JJ McCarthy at that point. And if they like him, they like him. If they love him, they love him. But do you find it at all concerning if the Giants are like, boy, we love Jaden Daniels. He's the guy. Boy, he's the guy we'd love to have. And they go, well, then you have to move up to 3 and it's going to take you a lot. And they go, well, we don't love him that much. We'll go with JJ. Like, I think you do need to be flexible in these things. And we've talked a lot about the perception of quarterbacks and the hit rate. Paul Dottino, by the way, responded to a fan talking about you have to get the quarterback. He goes, it's a 48% success rate in terms of first round quarterbacks making the Pro Bowl, which is a pretty big indicator of at least success, overall. So it is a hit or miss market here. How does it make you feel that the Giants have pivoted to JJ off of Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, again, I put my tinfoil hat on, and it's like anytime I hear this, people are saying Joe Schoen is very angry that it has gotten out, that he's in love with Jaden Daniels, just like he was in love with JJ McCarthy, just like he was at Caleb Williams' pro day. Like, oh my goodness, can you believe the chaos?
This is one of the easiest ones, by the way, being like, oh, he's angry that Jaden Daniels, that got out. Well, he was already a top 3 quarterback.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's not being in love with a guy that could fall to you. None of these guys have been reported to ever fall out of the top 3 to this point.
So mark my words. What's today? Today is, looks at calendar, March 22nd. I believe that at some point in the next 3 weeks,
here we go,
we will hear, Eli Manning has really taken Drake May under his wing. Eli Manning has taken Drake May under his wing. He was in the building. He was going to go on the Eli Manning show. It's no secret in the building that Drake May is the guy that Joe Schoen covets more than any of them. And why does this happen? Because it just cycles through every one of these quarterbacks.
Right.
And it's smart for Joe Schoen because if one of these quarterbacks magically falls, and whether you do or do not want them, you want people thinking that you are going to draft them so that they make irrational moves or give you irrational draft compensation to get the guy, right? So like it was him at Caleb Williams' pro day. It was JJ McCarthy's like the best quarterback we've ever seen. And now it's on to he really actually secretly loves Jaden Daniels. So March 22nd, 3 weeks from now, we're going to go back to this and you're going to be like, wow, Andy, you really nailed that with the Drake May piece. They're going to bring it back to Eli Manning in some regard because he's been talking to Drake May, had a cup of coffee with him. So clearly the Giants are going to draft him type thing. To your point, though, am I concerned if this is true? Yes, I would be concerned that they're like, well, we really love this guy, but it's impossible to get him. So we're just going to pivot to the next guy. It's like, I don't believe in trading up. I don't want to spend tons of draft capital. But if you believe that he is a franchise level quarterback and you need to take your swing, then I want you to get the guy that you truly want, not the guy that will be available to you. And if it means multiple first round picks to be able to get your guy, then you have to do it. That's I don't want them to do it, but I understand the logic of like, if you have identified the guy that can change the franchise, there really isn't an amount of draft compensation that you should be super scared about within reason, obviously. So for me, I'm like, go get the guy. If you like Jaden Daniels that much, go make a deal at 2 or at 3, give up multiple first round picks, do whatever you have to do, get the guy you want in the building. Because I don't want excuses later that like, well, we really like Jaden Daniels and he was amazing, but unfortunately we just couldn't get him. It's like, no, that doesn't fly with me. If you like him, go get him.
And that's why I don't think, unless nobody's willing to make a trade at the top of the draft, which is obviously a big factor. That's why I don't think that I will say whatever tinfoil hat you want to call it, that if they really love Jaden Daniels, then all of the buzz would be about what's their willingness to move up. What are they willing to give up? Right. As opposed to saying what I think could be more realistic is, well, Jaden Daniels would be optioned to be more competitive now, to get him in now, right? Start that version of it. Whereas the JJ McCarthy path could just be the, organizational idea around. And that would be maybe mid-season, next season, right? And we're just changing our timeline a little bit. And that does factor into when you're going to take a player. Maybe it doesn't change about your willingness to move up the draft board to give up assets to go do it. And if you talk about painting a picture like the Denver Broncos, maybe giving up almost nothing to go get the quarterback that you really like. That being the case, let's close out quickly here. Not quick. Let me take our time with things here on the show. But let's close out with planting our flag. You said it's the 22nd, a little over a month away from the draft. As of right now in this moment, what do you believe the Giants will do in the draft, holding the 6th overall pick as they currently do?
Okay. So again, this is not what we want the Giants to do. This is what do you think the
Yeah.
Giants will do at this spot? That can be for another show. If Adam has his wish, you would see 37 trades in the first round, and he would accumulate every pick in the 2026 NFL
You
draft.
better believe it.
But as it stands today, I truly believe that the Giants have created a massive smokescreen around wanting a quarterback, wanting to move up. You've heard whispers, oh, yeah. And they casually like talk to a couple teams about trading back. That doesn't really make the news, but like you hear all of these different things. You're hearing all of this quarterback stuff. Adam, to me, what I think is going to happen is I think that 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the first 4 picks. And that is going to leave the Chargers to make a decision on what they want to do. I think the Chargers are going to take Marvin Harrison Jr., who obviously Jim Harbaugh saw him quite a bit
Yep.
being at Michigan versus Ohio State. I think he gets Justin Herbert, that wide receiver number 1 transcendent player. The Giants are sitting there at 6, and I think the board fell exactly how they anticipated it would. I think as of right now, the Giants draft Malik Nabers with the 6th pick, saying he's got this explosive part to him that it's tough to pass up. The Giants have obviously had success with LSU type wide receivers with Odell Beckham before. I think that they take Malik Nabers at 6 and they set it and forget it with their wide receiver 1 moving forward. How do you like that one?
I don't not like it. You know what I mean? I think it's very feasible. I think it's interesting to talk about Arizona and where they feel that they are, right? They're still paying Kyler Murray money and they've had some departures in their wide receiver room. Do they, where are they in their timeline? I think that's actually a big factor in this because their willingness to move out comes down to how big of a package are you willing to offer to come up here and get your guy? And what do we think we can do with that? Because this isn't a team that wants to turn around and not be competitive, at least in the short term, while they still have Kyler Murray on the book. So, but if that's the case and it does go 1, 2, 3, 4, I think Marvin Harris Jr. still would be the obvious or the most logical for the Chargers there. When it comes to 6, and this isn't about what I would do, it's about what I think the Giants would do.
Correct.
Okay, so I won't even get into my issues with this potential. Okay. They're there at 6. I have a very hard time with this. I actually think that they would go Odunze. If it comes down to making the choice between Nabers and Odunze, I think they go Odunze because he represents the workhorse number 1 wide receiver, right? Physical player, a guy that is going to go out and challenge guys for it, a guy that, as you highlighted, stays after the combine to try to get down to the 6 seconds on the cone drill, even though nobody cares, but he wants to get that done, and it doesn't seem to come off with any air of like, I need to do this for everybody else. Like, I need to do this for me, and if I don't get it, I can't leave. I think that there's something about what the Giants have tried to shift to here organizationally this offseason. Healthy guys that bring in the right mentality, all those kind of things with a lot of their signings. So maybe it's a little bit shocking, but I think he had a perfect combine. I think they're all electric receivers, but I just think that Odunze would be the pick for the Giants there at 6 if they're staying and making that decision. And as you say, if all the quarterbacks are gone, I don't think that enticing trade down offer is going to be there from another team. So it makes sense for them to stay put, take Odunze, get the wide receiver. We will talk about another day whether or not this all matches up in terms of how you build your team.
Yeah, listen, that's the whole point. It's what do we think the Giants are going to do, not what would we want. Obviously, if JJ McCarthy is there at 6, it would really test all the news and reports
Quickly,
that we have heard.
if JJ McCarthy was there at 6 and you are the Giants making the choice, do you believe they're drafting JJ McCarthy?
No, I still don't. I just, for some reason, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Again, this is not about what I want. It's about what I think. And I think there's just been I've heard too much about the Giants. Like, why is it that why have we not heard a single thing from the Chargers who are at 5? You haven't heard a single peep on who they like, what they're planning on doing. They've cut a bunch of players. You have no idea what they're doing. You have the Cardinals saying, hey, we're open for business, AKA like, we'll do anything. We're open to whatever. All you're hearing from the Giants is they love this quarterback, they love the other quarterback, they're trying to move up for a quarterback. It's like, I'm hearing too much to believe it. Maybe I'm going to look foolish, at the end of the day, Adam. But to me, I just feel like there's too much noise about a quarterback. They want to build this team the right way. Remember, we're 12 months since Joe Shane gave Daniel Jones the contract. If you're going to solve a problem somewhere, I think he's going to go wide receiver 1.
All right, we can't get into that now. We can't get into the Daniel Jones side of this whole thing when it seems
what I
widely
think the
acknowledged.
Giants will do. Not
Yeah,
not
I guess that's
what
true. Yeah,
I want
okay.
them to do.
Here's what I will say: cliffhanger on this episode. See us next week, because there is more fire to the smoke of Daniel Jones still being believed in inside of the organization that I think fans would like to acknowledge. And that's where me thinking they'll take a wide receiver if they're there at 6 is more likely than maybe it should be. So that's a whole other can of worms that we can get into next week. In the meantime, though, you get over to YouTube, guys, over at One Giant Podcast. Give us a subscription. You go ahead, you turn on the alerts. Get over to the podcast feed. Find us on Spotify. Subscribe to it. If there's a place you can leave a review, go ahead and do that. Give us 5 stars or bust on it, wherever you can on the podcast side of things to help support it, because it really moves the needle for showcasing what this show is capable of growing into. Please do that, because we greatly appreciate it, as well as supporting all of our sponsors. All those links are in the show notes. Until next time, though, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.